When I talk with kids, I talk about like, what was a sport that initially you were not very good at, but you got better? And how did you get better? And they were like, well, with coaching and with practice. I'm like, it's just like learning. With effort and practice and the proper coaching, we can improve our ability and get much better at something that we weren't maybe initially very strong at.
Hello, and welcome to The Perch, where we highlight authentic voices, expert insights, and meaningful conversation. The Perch brings the Kinkaid School's mission to life through stories of education, leadership, and community. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Perch. I'm Mike Maury, and in today's episode, we'll shine light on one of the things that makes an education at the Kinkaid School so special: our student support services. Joining me today are three of Kinkaid's Learning Services leaders. We have the Director of Learning Services for our upper and middle school, Shannon Terrell, and Tamara Sell. Shannon and Tamara, welcome to The Perch.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us today.
And from our lower school, we have academic specialist Mary Bittner. Mary, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mike. We're glad to be here to share the important work we do at Kinkaid.
So let's start with a little background. Could each of you share how long you've been working in student support? And maybe what drew you to this kind of work? Shannon, why don't you kick us off?
Well, I have been working with student support for 33 years now. I've been at Kinkaid for 15 years. I started as a nutritionist major, and I had been volunteering at a little buddy program and really enjoyed interacting with younger children, and I changed my major and went into education, and I've been there ever since. So,
Tamara?
Well, this is my 35th year, if I can admit that. I spent the first half of my career in public education and in administration, and then in 2007 had the opportunity to work in an independent school in middle school at the Newman School in New Orleans, post-Katrina, and just immediately fell in love with the middle school level. I would have lost a bet, but it's just so amazing in middle school to watch these kids. The developmental growth that they demonstrate through middle school is just amazing, and you kind of get to be in touch with your quirky side. It's just a great time and a rough time. Like it's such a mishmash in middle school, and I fell in love with it.
Mary, how about you?
Well, I have been in this role for over 10 years, but before that, I was a classroom teacher, which I thoroughly loved. I have a passion for literacy and math instruction, and I enjoy following research and sharing it with my colleagues, so that led me into this role.
So the depth of your professional expertise is, again, yet another reason Kinkaid's education, I think, is so special. So you've shared a little bit about your experience. Now let's dig into what student support really looks like. Let's explain it a little bit more. It seems to me, when we were talking earlier, that student support is really more about student success than just support. So Tamara, how would you describe student success in your role?
For me, student success goes beyond the letter grade. It's about that student becoming a self-advocate, learning about taking responsibility for their learning. Coming, 5th and 6th grade, we're still learning, but as we go into 7th and 8th grade, we're starting to take responsibility for our own learning. We're understanding the value of going to tutorials, and that being successful isn't just about a letter grade or making somebody else happy. It's about embracing my own learning and pushing and having expectations of myself and taking responsibility, especially as they're heading towards upper school.
and in the upper school, we do a lot of the same, focus on the same skills and strategies, and it's another continuum. And we sort of start out in 9th and 10th grade with a lot of scaffolding, and then towards 11th and 12th grade, we really want to see that independence building and that self-advocacy grow, because they're going to college and they need to be on their own, and they need to know how to seek out services in college and how to advocate for themselves. We do a lot. I'd say the things we focus on most are like building resilience, organizational skills. Time management is a big thing that they have a hard time with coming into the high school. getting to know how to study. Sometimes they say they study, but they just sort of think reading over notes or looking at notes is studying, really learning how to recall and retrieve information multiple times so that they understand it.
Can you tell us a little bit more about time management? I think that's going to resonate with a lot of folks, a lot of parents, especially when it comes to teenagers. So what are we doing here, and specifically you and your team doing to help support kids become more successful at time management?
So it's really hard because in the middle school, they do not have a lot of time. Your time is really planned out. It's a little less planned out in the upper school, but they still have most of their time structured. But they have some free periods. They have some time after school. So there's a little bit more free time for them to organize on their own and learn how to be independent and work independently. College is a whole different story. Then they really need to know how to manage that free time and work independently, because once you get to college, you might have 2 classes on one day and the whole, large chunks of time in between where you need to know how to sit down and organize your studying time and really space out projects. So that's the big thing is if you have a big project, really breaking it into smaller chunks and like studying in little bits over time. And really, I do a lot of working with schedules. They have to have some kind of planner, whether it's a paper planner, electronic planner, some method that they use and hopefully keep using into adulthood to help them organize. And we look at everything. We put down what we have before school, after school, everything's sort of planned out when they're going to go to office hours, really getting in the habit of planning ahead of time.
So Mary, you work with our youngest Falcons. How do you help them build the foundational skills that will carry them forward as they move into middle school?
Well, first, by recognizing that students learn in a variety of ways, and that when you look at the youngest Falcons, our youngest friends are 4 years old entering, and then they're leaving at ages 10 or 11. So there is a developmental continuum where a lot happens socially, academically, emotionally, and physically. Also, an important part of my job is helping teachers meet students where they are. And then myself and the other learning specialist, we support children with a variety of needs. And we do that by offering an extra layer of specialized instruction in small group situations.
So that's interesting. You talk about student success, and you listed academic, social, emotional, and this broad range of ages. So the picture of student success when you're 4 years old,
Yes.
versus student success when you're 10 years old, gosh, that's a lot to manage.
It is.
You must have a nice team in the lower school that helps make that happen.
It's a wonderful team. And really, we all just want each child to reach their potential. That's how we look at success.
So the education field is always evolving with new research, new technology, strategies, new tools. I'd like each of you to share maybe one idea or approach that you've learned recently, either through research, some continuing education, or some professional development that you did, something that had a real impact on the work you do today with your students.
Recently, new learning for lower school has been all about productive struggle. And when students struggle productively, that's really the key to learning. And it may look messy and it's unpredictable, but that's how learning takes place. There's an opportunity, particularly for math, for students to build flexible thinking and a deeper understanding of how numbers work through exploration and collaboration before we have that direct instruction.
Wow. So I believe you said productive struggle?
Mm-hmm.
That is an interesting concept. Is there an example maybe you could give our listeners? What does productive struggle look like in any subject?
Well, we don't want a child to hit frustration.
Okay.
And so I think working with peers and exploring a problem and having them collaborate with manipulatives or with a common text that helps give them the confidence to begin to understand it so they don't struggle as much.
Shannon, how about you? Something new, a new strategy or piece of technology, research that's really having an impact on your work today?
Well, this summer I realized that my ADHD certification, specialist certification, was going to expire, and I had to renew it. I had to take a 20 hours class, and the only one that was available was a meditation and mindfulness class. And I was a little hesitant because I'm not great at being mindful or meditating. I'm kind of always on the go, and so I took it, and it was really one of the most amazing classes I've ever taken. And I have to be honest, and the research behind it is so strong and so amazing. And I know that in my mind, but part of the class was actually participating in a bunch of mindfulness activities. And towards the end of the summer, my stress levels were down, and I found myself taking the techniques and putting them into my day, and it really was effective. And so I'm trying to do that with my students today in very small chunks, but it was a really, really powerful class. And the research shows it helps with focus, attention, working memory, and anxiety and stress levels, which our kids really need some help with. So
I believe, based on the way you explained that, that may not have been available when you started in this business.
absolutely not. This is definitely on the newer, yes. And some people are reluctant to try it. I think and the person who ran the course was very open about that, about how to put it in very slowly so that people get on board and reap the benefits of it. It's really starting with the faculty. And I was a believer after that because I was, wow, it really did help me. So yes.
That's great. Tamara, what do you think?
I've really been inspired by the work of Carol Dweck in the area of growth mindset. In the middle school, we read the book NeuroTeach over the summer. And I think one of the things that's really cool about education right now is that we're learning more about not just instructional methods, but how the brain works and how we can use that to our advantage. Over the last several years, we've learned a lot more about growth mindset. We've learned about neuroplasticity, that we can improve our ability with effort and practice. And I think that's so important for kids to understand that my success has a lot. I can improve my success with perseverance and pushing through when things are difficult. It's so easy to say, I'm bad at math. In reframing, and of course, you're not going to get any better. And I think kids understand better with sports. When I talk with kids, I talk about what was a sport that initially you were not very good at, but you got better, and how did you get better? And they were like, well, with coaching and with practice. I'm like, it's just like learning. With effort and practice and the proper coaching, we can improve our ability and get much better at something that we weren't maybe initially very strong at. And I think that's an important part of kids taking ownership of their learning and understanding that they are in some control.
I think it's wonderful that for all three divisions, we are talking about our mindsets and how that impacts our learning.
And how research has contributed to education.
Right.
So,
Yes.
So we're doing so much more in this era related to making that connection between science and learning and how our brains work. The book that I mentioned earlier, NeuroTeach, is by Glenn Whitman and Ian Kelleher. NeuroTeach, the Brain Science and the Future of Education. So every middle school teacher read that over this past summer. So we're really looking deeply at what are our practices as we go through the school year, continuing to go back to the concepts that were presented in the book, and how can that inform our instruction and help us better understand our students. So for me as a learning specialist, it's great because everybody's suddenly speaking the same language as me.
Absolutely. And I'd like to also put a plug out for our favorite conference, which is Learning in the Brain, which we try to attend. There are 3 conferences every year, and we're starting to send some of our upper school teachers to these conferences, which is fabulous, so that they come back just, as excited as we are about the new research and how students learn and the best practices to use.
And again, that's a plug for the professional development that Kinkaid provides teachers.
They do a great job.
Very meaningful experiences that can help teachers really grow their craft.
I'm glad you mentioned teachers because I'm curious about, you described the work that you do, and then you just began mentioning working with the many teachers we have. Obviously, you don't work in a vacuum. You need that army on the front line. Can any of you tell us a little bit about that, of how you work with teachers on some of this?
I would say I work closely with the English teachers. 'Cause that's my area of expertise as a reading specialist, and that's my background. Lori Anderson and Miss Liz Moore is my other learning specialist who has more of a reading specialist background. And Lori Anderson, who is our math science specialist, she works closely with our science and math teachers. So it and we'll bring some of our strategies in that they'll then share with the class. So we do work, and sometimes we might actually go into the classroom and help them if they have a project or something like that. But usually we do some consulting, especially for specific students who are struggling, or just in general for strategies they might need help with.
And really, I would say one of the major parts of our jobs, is one of the most significant components, is collaborating with our colleagues, letting them know what accommodations students have, building those relationships so that we can work together to support student success.
So before we close, I would like to ask each of you, why this work? What inspires you to keep doing this year after year?
We're all in this field because we love students and children. We build relationships, and we get to see them outside of the classroom. And so I feel like there's a little bit of getting to know them personally along with academically. But the biggest joy is seeing them reach their full potential.
The kids, I mean, just the energy, the joy. I got to teach 3 sections of human development last Friday and teach them test study strategies. And it's just so, I think, I don't know who gets more out of it, but it's energizing, and it's positive, and it's productive, and we have the best job.
We really do. And I get to work with them from 9th grade through 12th grade, so I really get to know them over the course of 4 years, and it's so fun for me to see the growth. And sometimes I'll get emails when they have babies, and when they're grown up, or these emails from college are way down, 10 to 15 years later, and that is just like the highlight of my week.
That is wonderful. Shannon, Tamara, Mary, thanks for joining us today. And I think I speak for all of us in the listener group. Thanks for sharing your passion for what you do to support our students and to help them be successful.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Pratt.
Thank you, Mike.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Perch. We'll be back again in 2 weeks for more conversations about education, leadership, and community. Be sure to follow us on social media, check out Kinkaid's website, and read the Falcon Flyer to see more ways that Kinkaid supports our students and our community. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Perch.